Hey folks, it's Jack here from Peach Guitars. Welcome to today's Tale of Two Tones, and this is going to be the hardest thing that I probably ever attempt to do on the Peach Guitars YouTube channel. So before I get into this episode today about Jeff Beck, I want to just remind you to please like this video, comment down below with your thoughts, and make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Okay, so for today's video on A Tale of Two Tones, I'm going to try and do something that really should never be attempted, I think, by anyone other than the man himself. I'm going to try and take apart some of the famous iconic tones of Mr. Jeff Beck, who in my opinion is one of the best guitarists in the world, and he's one of the most inimitable as well. And he's certainly always had a sound that has kind of lent itself to very, very expressive guitar playing. That's kind of what he's best known for. And the rigs that he's always had have been used for that purpose, I think. He's such an expressive guitar player, just using his fingers, particularly in his later years anyway. So what I'm going to do in this, as I have done with the rest of the videos in this series, is break it down into two different rigs. Rig A is where I'm going to focus on his earlier tones, kind of around the late 60s, early 70s Jeff Beck Group era, that kind of tone, with the Les Paul and a Marshall style amp. And then I'm going to move into Rig B, which is what I'm playing, what I'm holding right now, which is of course the famous Strat, into a Marshall DSL with a few things on the floor as well. I'm going to detail each of those rigs separately as we go. But yeah, the thing I want to kind of get across in this video is to show how the rigs that Jeff has used has informed his playing, and vice versa, of course. And what you find is that his style has actually changed quite drastically on the different musical situations that he's been in. So back in the early days when he was playing with, as I said, the Jeff Beck Group and various other bands, he was a real kind of band type guitar player, and the tones that he was using were a little bit more musically orientated to that kind of setup where he was playing predominantly blues rock and stuff like that. And then as he got older, I guess, and as he got more experimental and started to veer more towards the Strat end of the scale, this is where you really hear the magic of his playing and how dynamic he was and how much control he has over the guitar. So also the disclaimer I want to put here, as I do in all of these Tale of Two Tones videos, is that I'm not going for any particular album recorded or live tone at all. I'm just trying to get into the vibe and the mindset that that player might have had at two different stages in their career. And going forward, of course, Jeff has since been known to play Magnatone and Marshall amplifiers, gone back to more of a sort of old school approach with more vintage style amps. But the Rig B that I'm focusing on here today that you're going to hear is with the Marshall DSL. So I'm kind of referring back probably about 10-15 years or something like that. So those are the two kind of eras of tone that I'm going to go for. Okay, so let's kick things off with Rig A, and for this particular selection I wanted to go to the earliest days of the Jeff Beck Group, kind of around 68, 69. He'd just come out of the Yardbirds, doing the whole Telecaster thing and playing that famous Esquire, and I think he wanted to move into slightly more of a sonically heavy direction, and that's where the Jeff Beck Group came in. He started to move into the typical blues rock setup of having a Les Paul, a burst, with a Marshall amplifier. And he tended to play, I think, in quite a different way to what we associate that rig sounding like. His tone was a lot more aggressive sounding. He was a much more abrasive player. And conversely to the rig I'm going to show you for Rig B, where I think his tone was a bit brighter and he played softer, in the earlier days he played a lot harder and his rig was a little bit smoother sounding so that it didn't take your face off. Because when he would really lay into certain licks, it was really, really aggressive, and a lot of those slides up and down the fingerboard that he would do and the pull-offs, I think he took a lot of his influence from certain rockabilly players, and he certainly put that into the blues rock kind of formula that they were playing with at the time. But what sets him apart, I think, was not only the way he played, but also certain effects that he would use quite pivotally. So, for example, I'm using from Full Tone on the floor the Soul Bender, which is basically a tone bender fuzz unit, which I think he started to use a little bit later on, more into the 70s. But he was one of the first players to really adopt that very aggressive fuzz sound. More so than the creamier fuzz face type tone that Hendrix was using. Jeff Beck's sound was always a little bit more angular and angry, and that's courtesy of that fuzz, I think, had a lot to do with it. It plays well with the volume control of this guitar, so I've gone for this 59 custom shop to get some of those tones. I'm playing into a Dr. Z Maz 18. I did say that I was going to use more of a Marshall style amplifier, and that's testament to how versatile the Maz is. I've kind of set it up for more of a Marshall style tone, though again it's got some of that chime that Jeff Beck is known to have in his tone as well. But as I did say, it's fairly driven, it's fairly mid-range focused, and it's not really that bright in a harsh way, so that's nice. It plays nicely with the playing style that this earlier kind of era of Jeff's playing, that's what he kind of went for. I'm also using a wah pedal, as I do with Rig B as well. I'm using an exotic XW1 wah pedal. Just a really great sound, and quite an aggressive wah sound Jeff had as well, and you hear it on tracks like I Ain't Superstitious from the Truth album, and just he really had a very vocal way of playing with these effects, and the fuzz as well, just by using the guitar volume. So they're very simple effects. They're pretty much effects that every other guitar player at the time was using, but you know it's Jeff Beck as soon as you hear him using those things, because he does it in such a vocal and fluid kind of a way. Okay then, so rig B, as I said in the introduction, this is going back about 10 years or so when he was most notably using Marshall DSL style amplifiers with his signature Strat. Now, we don't have a signature Strat in stock, so what I've got here is kind of the next best thing, if you like. This guitar was spec'd out at the custom shop to be very much a Jeff Beck style spec, so it's got a lot of the same features that you'd find on his signature model. The locking tuners, the 2-post tremolo, kind of more modern bridge system. It's actually got a Seymour Duncan JB humbucking pickup in here, but the way I'm using it today is in this guitar's coil split mode. Now the key, I think, to this later era of tone is that the amp is quite loud and quite aggressive and abrasive sounding, and that's kind of by design, because then what he will do is use a clon. So I'm using a Ryra, the clone pedal on the floor, to get that clon thing happening, and that's where all the kind of the harmonics and the gain and the smoothness comes in, coupled with the fact that the bridge tone control on this guitar is always around about 5, and just by riding the volume control and by using the flesh on your fingertips as well rather than the pick, Jeff made this tone work for him. So as opposed to the earlier rig where the tone was a little bit darker and he kind of played more aggressively, I think this rig is kind of the opposite, where the rig is quite bright. If you were to play everything full on, it would be quite an abrasive sound, but by just the style that he plays with now more recently with his fingers, as I say, you kind of get a little bit more of that smooth, balanced nature. So yeah, the other stuff on the floor, I've got an exotic wah, which he's known to use the Snarling Dogs wah, which is quite an aggressive sounding wah. Again, I think the best thing about Jeff's setup is that he always kind of goes for extreme. So it's quite an extreme sounding wah, it's quite an extreme sounding amp setting, and the reverb that I've got from the MXR reverb as well in some of the more kind of quieter little segments I'm going to play. That's quite extreme as well, but it's all to do with the touch, and I'm not going to claim that I have Jeff's touch whatsoever, but I'm going to give it my best shot to try and get into the mindset at least of how I think he works some of these tools, and hopefully you're going to get that from this clip that you're going to hear. It's really all in the hands, but the gear is set up in a certain way to facilitate that real expressive kind of tone that he's known to use. I am actually just using this DSL on the classic gain channel today. I believe that kind of in the 90s Jeff was using more of the ultra gain channel, so he had a little bit more of a high gain thing happening, but nowadays he's a little bit more traditional, so any Marshall style amp will get you pretty close, but I'm using the DSL as it is probably the Marshall amp most closely associated with Beck, and it will get you very close, coupled with the clon that I've got on the floor. Okay, so there we are, Tale of Two Tones with Jeff Beck. It's definitely one of the hardest things to try and nail, but I hope that you'll stay tuned for the next Tale of Two Tones. If you want to do so and you haven't done so already, please make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. And you like, comment down below with your thoughts. If you'd like to find out any more information about any of the gear that I've shown you in this video, then head to peachguitars.com by clicking the link in the description below. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.